Welcome to a special Character Creation Spotlight episode, everyone. This episode, we've got Rich Howard with us to give us a quick rundown of a game Amelia and I can't shut up about. Descent into Midnight. Currently on Kickstarter and currently going for stretch goals. The game funded in just under 18 hours, and they are, as of this recording, about $1,600 away from meeting their second stretch goal. They already unlocked a one-shot by Eric Campbell from the Streampunks for the Streampunks channel, and every stretch goal they hit will give us another episode, up to a total of 12 episodes for their campaign. I know I am excited to see a multi-session game of Descent into Midnight released into the wild, so you might as well get on this as soon as you can so we can blow through those stretch goals. Since this is a bonus episode, I don't have much more to announce since Monday, and we've only got a few more days until our next episode, so we will just leave it at that. So let's go ahead and dive into this amazing game and learn about all the new cool stuff that has come since we last covered this game in Series 18. Series 18, funded in 18 hours. Coincidence? Probably, but still, it makes you think. Anyway, enjoy. Welcome to a special bonus episode of Character Creation Spotlight, everyone. In this bonus segment, we'll be shining a light on some current or up-and-coming games to keep an eye out for. I'm your host, Ryan, and today we are welcoming Rich Howard to talk about Descent into Midnight, a hope punk underwater fish horror remarkable RPG that is kickstarting right now. Welcome to Character Creation Spotlight, and welcome back to Character Creation Cast, Rich. It's really great to have you again.
Thanks so much. I think this is only my second time. I've got like 5 more until I get the t-shirt, right?
I know. We got to get you to that lucky 7.
I know, exactly.
For those that missed our Blue Planet series, first is a really great series with a bunch of great guests. So go check that out if you haven't already. But for now, Rich, could you start us off with first telling us a bit about yourself and what sort of other projects you have going on right now?
Sure. My name is Rich Howard. I am a podcaster and a game designer in my off hours. What do I do, Ryan? I am the co-host and co-creator of a podcast called Whelmed, the Young Justice Files. And on Whelmed, the Young Justice Files, what do we hit? 215 episodes, I think, now.
Yeah, it's way up there.
It's up there. Yeah, it's been going on for about 3.5 years. We break down the DC Comics animated series Young Justice and use that as a springboard to talk about the creative writing process, as well as talking about role-playing games as well. In fact, we had a Masks actual play where we played between seasons 1 and 2 with the DC characters from Young Justice, and it was amazing, run by the creator of the game, Brendan Conway. So I am also the concept lead for Descent into Midnight, which is the game we're going to talk about today. And you had my co-designers, Richard Kruetz-Landry and Taylor LaBresh, who are incredible, on the Descent into Midnight full episodes. I'm sorry I could not make it to those. I think I was working over that weekend.
Very cool. Thank you so much for being here, Rich. Now, if you notice, we already covered Descent into Midnight in a full series with Richard Kruetz-Landry and Taylor LaBresh, and we know that not all of our listeners hit every series.
Sure.
So we'd like to cover this game in a shorter format since we are already in the thick of the Kickstarter as of the release of this episode.
That's right.
Yeah, so since this is an abridged version of our normal format, we'll just be sticking to the highlights of the system with a special focus on character creation. So without further ado, how about we find out what this game is all about?
What's in a game?
Yeah. So at its heart, Descent into Midnight is a game about community and family and hope in the face of encroaching corruption. So I love the fact that people constantly are like, I don't know how to describe this game. Even after they've played it 6 or 7 times, they still don't know how to describe it. You would think that would be a terrible PR point, but in our case, it seems to be more of a peak of curiosity than anything else. The kicker with this particular game, pun intended, I suppose, is Descent to Midnight takes place on a yet undiscovered, unknown alien aquatic world. That aquatic world has never been touched by humanity. The characters that you play are guardians of an advanced underwater civilization. That's biotechnology. That's technology is based on biotechnology and psionics. We emphasize the fact that humanity has never been to this place and never will go to this place because we are leaning heavily into this concept of like, what is sapience? What is sentience? We have no canon setting necessarily, so even though we give these descriptions that there's biotechnology and there's psionics and there's a corruption and there's an advanced civilization, and you're playing basically aquatic fish people, but you don't even have to do that, and we'll get into that in a little bit either as well. Yeah. So those are like bumpers for you. But really, the setting can be, because we have no canon setting, we have no set species, and we have no set corruption. All of that, the game guides you into creating at the table with your friends at the table to create a setting and species and culture and corruption that's entirely unique to your gaming table and hits the points and hits the dramatic narrative concepts that you want to address at the table, which to us is more important than us trying to create a setting and convincing you that it's interesting.
Yeah, the collaborative world building in this game is phenomenal. I know we did a collaborative world building episode on one of our Evolution Cast series, but this kind of even goes beyond that, and you're creating everything from scratch with one another at the table. And it doesn't,
some people I would think anyway would be like, that's a lot of work. We try to make it not work.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it.
I think that's the thing in the game, and you could speak to that being a player. Like, we can design it all we want, but the effectiveness of it is only determined by the people around the table, right?
Yeah.
So with leading questions, with playbooks, because we're a Powered by the Apocalypse system, we don't use class systems or point-by systems. We use playbooks, and those playbooks for the characters, we have 10 of them so far for the concepts for characters, and those playbooks are designed to kind of guide you into some ideas and concepts, seed ideas with the language, the beautiful, poetic, fascinating language that Taylor uses that is very inspirational to the imagination, to give you some tools to bring to the table, literally to the table. One of the things for myself that was very important for me, I have a degree in marine biology, amongst other things, and my platform, when I started doing game design, 7 or 8 years ago on a professional level, was to bring more aquatic settings and a more aquatic adventure to a wide range of role-playing games. The reason why is because I want people to understand and to be curious about the oceans that we have here. With Descent into Midnight, you can bring that random fact that you learned from that documentary when you were 6 years old. You can bring it to the table, and you don't need to know the science. Because here, it's an alien world, there's psionics, there's biotechnology. Use it as a seed of inspiration, not as, I don't know enough about the ocean to be able to play in it. We don't want that. We want it to be a welcoming, enjoyable exploration of those things at the table and pique curiosity, not quash it with details.
Yeah, it's a lot like when you're trying to think of something that you want to use in a more traditional game, and you say, it's magic, so it just works.
Yeah, and in our case, though, that can have some narrative, that can be a narrative crutch, that can be an issue in many ways, which we try to use it as, look, if you want to play kind of a merfolk Like if you literally want to make your setting Little Mermaid and have the psionics be magic and have the corruption be Ursula, it's all you, right?
Yeah.
So you can make whatever you want. But if you want to play a tuna, you can play a tuna. It doesn't matter because in the society we assume there's a blanket, a conceit of the game that the species that are involved, however they're created, have enough level of psionic ability to be able to communicate between the species, however you want to describe that, and to be able to interact with their surroundings. You don't have to have something like an octopus or something that has prehensile, a tail or fingers. You don't need to have that. And the psionics help us kind of gloss over that so we can get to the point. Like, we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is the emotional consequences of choice and action, the emotional consequences of things like of violence, of conflict resolution, de-escalation. How does that work? And community building coming together. I don't want to get lost if we were focused on those other things about how the species work too much, we'd get lost in the weeds and we'd lose the story we're trying to guide people to.
Yeah, it's great because it has this Powered by the Apocalypse backbone to it where a lot of PBTA games allow you to interpret the stuff that's in the rules. Like it'll give you a small little prompt and you get to determine what that means to you and to your character and to the story.
Yeah. When I first experienced PBTA games, it was with Masks and a brilliant game by Mark Richardson called Headspace. And just the character generation in Headspace was incredible. I was actually a guest on One Shot Network. We did like a special, it was just a character creation episode for Headspace that I did with Jim McClure and
nice.
Who is Meglish from Modifier and her now husband Dan and James. We were at, I think that was all of us. It was a while ago, but it was at a Gen Con and we recorded it and I was like, this is incredible. All the way the leading questions created this fascinating story between us. And we hadn't even quote unquote played the game, even though character creation is playing the game. But in this case, I walked away and I was like, I have an epic novel in my head just from character creation. Same thing happens in Masks. That brilliant concept of those leading questions really the idea behind this concept, why I'm concept lead, a lot of the ideas that are in this game, I've been trying to do in role-playing games since I learned how to play in 1977 or 78. I wanted to do some of these things, and I've tried to play with them. Wrote, I don't know how many articles I have on Tribality. I have a whole column called From the Depths talking about, using these things and these ideas for things like D&D and other systems. But they weren't really scratching the itch. I had an itch I couldn't get scratched, and I couldn't figure out what it was until I played Headspace. And I was like, wait a minute, your ability scores are emotions?
Yeah.
And Masks, your ability scores are how do you perceive yourself? I'm like, wait a minute, you're just totally reprogramming my brain. And so when Richard and I were talking about this game, it came up from a Twitter joke. When we were talking about it, I was like, oh, what do I want? What things do I want to focus on? Hope, community, altruism, right? Yeah. Drive, calm. Those are our 5 stats. And what does that mean to me? And what socio-emotional or psychosocial or socio-emotional things do I want to focus on in a game? Yeah. And I think I can do it in this game. What? And also make it about, the underwater ocean. Yeah. I'd be perfectly blunt. Like, Richard and I kind of came up with this general idea, and then we immediately were like, we need somebody who knows PBTA better than we do right now, and we brought Taylor. I was like, Taylor, please. Taylor is an incredible human being and an amazing designer. Let's bring him in. And so we all started getting this idea together. I was like, who's going to play this? Who's going to play this game? This like strange alien fish emotion game like that we're making. And we're like, we're loving it, and we can't stop working on it. No. But I have to tell you, I'm consistently floored with the reactions we're getting from the game after the 3.5 years of playtesting. Absolutely. It's become way more than any one of us could have possibly done ourselves. And the playtesters have pointed us in that direction. Yeah, so, I know. I'm extremely excited for this one. Yeah. This is the PBTA game that opened my brain, basically. To the possibilities of RPGs, which is fantastic. Well, we appreciate that. I'm shocked by the number of people like, oh, this is my first role-playing game. I'm like, this was your choice?
Yep.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, let's do this. Let's start you on a very different footing than I started back in '77.
Yep.
Okay.
My wife has played 2 role-playing games, sessions, and they have both been Descent into Midnight.
They've both been Descent. Nice.
So yeah, it's a really interesting experience. So let's find out a little bit more about this game. What sort of materials do we need to play Descent into Midnight?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 10 playbooks. You'll need a playbook. Someone will need either the rule book or what we have currently right now, and it's available right now on the Kickstarter. And we have discussed, and I think we have settled on the idea that the Quick Start Guide and the playbooks will always be available for free.
Nice.
So anybody who wants to play the game can pick up the Quick Start Guide and the playbooks and go to town. So you'll need those 2 things: pencil, 2 6-sided dice, and bring to the table that one thing you learned from that documentary that time when you were 6.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't matter what it is. More than likely, and I've seen this at so many playtest tables, people come to the game and say, I don't know anything about marine science. They're inevitably the person that's teaching everyone at the table the marine science, because
heck yeah,
they think everybody's heard about an Aristotle's lantern, or how hermit crabs change their shells in a conga line, or whatever random bizarre piece of information they have about the ocean. They're just like, well, I know this, so everybody must know this, and everybody at the table is like, excuse me, and then they're all Googling amazing things. So bring that. Whatever fascinates you, whatever you find beautiful and entrancing, whatever you find horrifying, whatever you find scary, bring it to the table and introduce it at a level that you're comfortable with, and then fold it with other people's ideas. So those are the only real things that you need.
And I think another thing would be maybe like a sheet of paper, because there's a map mechanic that you can use to map out your city and community.
Well, actually, so yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So when I say the playbook, you'll need a playbook. There is a community playbook, basically. So you can just print that out, and on the playbook so each individual character playbook, there are something called corruption moves. So in Powered by the Apocalypse, the game is a conversation, right? You're having a conversation about what happens if you want to do something, you do it. Until you run into like a mechanic, or there's a question narratively about what interesting thing might happen. And so once you run into a mechanic, it's called a move. Each playbook has their own personal moves that kind of describe narratively what they do in the world and the story you want to tell in that world. But each playbook also has 3 specific corruption moves. So there's 30 individualized corruption moves in the game. There are 2 corruption moves that are common to everyone that you can choose from. So there's a total of 5. Those 2 corruption moves we put on the community playbook, so you can see what those are. And then there's also spaces to create new moves for your community itself, if you want to, or advancements or things that you want to put on. And there's a space to draw out your community. So,
that's brilliant.
So if you can, by all means, do whatever detailed drawing you want of your community. And as the games go on, if you're playing a campaign, you add to the community as the spotlight goes to new districts or areas or arenas. So you can have a piece of paper, but we do have the community playbook that you can use.
Okay. So what, you have a bunch of playbooks for this game. You said about 10 of them.
Yes.
What sort of character playbooks can we expect from Descent into Midnight?
Yeah, so our playbooks, some people refer to them as character classes or like think of them as character classes, and I get that idea, but they're kind of not. So there's much about the story you want to tell with the character that you have as they are about what the character does in the world. And a good example I give of that is a playbook we call The Redeemed. And the Redeemed character is a character who is created for conflict. So a machine of war, someone who is created, even like a social war, like someone who's like trained or has certain psychic abilities or something to deal with politics in a direct confrontational way. Some way you are a weapon of conflict and you are no longer that, and you are now a guardian of this society. So you are trying to, the playbook is about attempting to try and figure out what you are now. Where do you fit in society? When you were created for a thing, and that thing is not a thing you do anymore, who are you? So you can look at the Redeem playbook used to, and I think Taylor or Richard mentioned this in the larger Descent into Midnight, but the Redeem playbook had originally been called the Living Weapon. And it just became a playbook that people were like, oh, it's the fighter. I'm just going to play that. Well, you can look at the Redeem that way if you want to, but just a lot like the Bull in Masks.
Yep.
It's like, oh, yeah, you can play Superboy if you want, but let me tell you, this playbook's going to lead you to some emotional places and questions of who you are and why you exist. So, you're welcome to go that route. Other playbooks include like the Empath. That absorbs and supports other people's emotions and helps them kind of heal from traumas and things like that. But our empath also can absorb the corruption, take that corruption away from other people and absorb it into themselves. And then they can either choose to let that go, or they can choose to use that corruption against the corruption. So you walk a thin line between how far do you go fighting fire with fire? And what are the consequences of what that is? So less, again, it as much the story you want to tell with the playbook as it is what you just do in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of really great character types. Empath is one of my favorites. The Seeker.
Seeker is also one of my favorites, yeah. So in our setting, along with the biotechnology and psionics, we have an aspect that you'll see in some other games. It's called we call it the Echo, and it's another dimension. In a game like D&D, they might call it something like the astral or ethereal planes. In our game, the Echo is the world behind worlds. I describe it as if the Echo is an ocean, the physical reality, the dimension that you live in, is the iceberg that has frozen and solidified out of that ocean. And that solidification, that ice, can be melted and reformed into new and different things. So the physical world affects the Echo, and the Echo affects the physical world. So that's how our psionics work. And most people use psionics in a Descent into Midnight setting in the same way that we use our cell phones. Like, I have no idea how my phone works. I just turn it on and press buttons and it works, right? So if you have species like one species that communicates by chromatophores on their skin, and another species that communicates, audibly or vocally, they may not be able to communicate well together under normal circumstances, but in this setting, everybody's got enough telepathy to make that work. And the way telepathy works is someone has a thought or idea, and they basically toss it into the Echo. The Echo and the ripples from that thought, that idea, that emotion go through the Echo to that other person and get interpreted in their brains the way that they can understand the concept you're offering. Well, there are playbooks that all the playbooks kind of interact with the Echo in different ways, in small ways, but the Seeker and the Muse both deal with the Echo in much deeper ways. And in the case of the Seeker, where most people deal with the Echo that's nearby and close to your reality, the Seeker projects what we call their silhouette, their own personal Echo reflection. They can project that through the Echo and go to other icebergs. They can explore other worlds, other ideas. They can explore the future, the past. They'll go out into the world. They will psychically journey into the world. They're a form of psychonaut, and they will bring back visions that they can then interpret to help the people around you, or use those visions to help, to hurt or manipulate or whatever. Like, some Seekers may not have everybody's best intention in mind. We don't know. So all the playbooks are designed to be played along a theme or a trope, but to be played in different ways. So each time you play a playbook, you could play empaths that are very, very different from one another. We have make sure that each playbook has a core move that they always have, but then they have many other moves that they choose from. And you choose 2 at a time. And those moves were designed in different combinations to be able to reflect different concepts and ideas.
Yeah. So you were talking a little bit about the moves that the playbooks get and the moves that you select. What other sort of things do you need to do for character creation at kind of like a higher level?
Yeah, sure. So the main front page will have ideas for things of your attitude, what kind of creature you are. But these aren't specific things like a shark. They're more like a colony of creatures, or lithe and lustrous, or deceptively delicate. These are concepts, right? They're ideas to spark your imagination, to not tell you what you need to do. On the session that you guys had, if I remember correctly, Amelia had lithe and lustrous, and she interpreted that as a iridescent clam, bitey clam, right? And other people may interpret those as different things. And again, in each of these 10 playbooks has 3 to 4 typically alliterative descriptions of who they could be, and they're meant to inspire your imagination. Another place would be your homeland. Originally in the development, our homelands were very specific. It was like a kelp forest or a hydrothermal vent field, right? And then Taylor, in his poetic genius, took all that out one night and said, I'm going to try something different. And then he put in things like too many teeth, or a center of civilization, or a warm light. Like, those were the ideas of homelands. And it was, again, reprogram my brain. It was brilliant because then it inspires you to think, how would I interpret this? Like, what is this interesting? The boneyard. Is it a graveyard? Is it a place that generates life? Like, what is that? Instead of, again, us telling you something that we hope is interesting, we're seeding ideas so that you can tell us what your most interesting thing is. The people who are guides for our game masters, we call them guides. I know I can speak for myself and Richard and Taylor. We are constantly blown away by what is brought to the table. We are as entertained as anyone at the table is about what's happening in front of us. And so that's amazing. So that playbooks, your stats, which we talked about earlier, stats like things like hope and community, altruism, drive, and calm. Those are typically assigned depending on what your playbook is, but they can be adjusted as you get advancements. And that's basically it. As you advance, as you interact more with the world around you, and as you interact more with the corruption, you may accumulate corruption. And when you accumulate a certain level of corruption, you will gain access to a corruption move. One of the 3 special ones that you have on your playbook, or one of the 2 that anyone can choose. Each corruption move can only be selected and can only be triggered once. And it allows you to do something absolutely spectacular and breathtaking at terrible, terrible consequence. They can be really fascinating. One of the shared corruption moves that anyone can choose, and that you will eventually have to choose if you've chosen your other 4, is how do you end the story of this character related to the corruption? The thing is that you can pick that corruption move as your very first one if you find it narratively interesting. And you can, which happened at a one-shot that brought me to tears. It was incredible. So these corruption moves are fascinating to me in this idea that you can do these things that may save everyone's life, but then what is the emotional consequence, the social consequence, the idea, the concept of what it is that you're doing afterwards? That is also fascinating to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, there's a lot of good stuff with like there's not many steps to character creation, but there's so much to the characters that it is so delicious of a system to create characters for.
That's a great quote, Ryan. I think any good game, tabletop game, like board game, that kind of thing, has simple concepts and ideas that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. And so that way, teaching the game is generally pretty easy to do. And we were able to get into a story fairly quickly and a world fairly quickly, and even go through some conflict and resolve that conflict fairly quickly in a 3 to 4 hour one shot, to the point where people walk away feeling like they have novels and novels of a story in their head just from a few hours of sitting at the table. And that's something that's it's a breathtaking thing to watch, because of course, we love that it does that, and we were trying to head in that general direction, but somehow the pieces fell together quite well, and the playtesters gave us feedback that said, I want this. Do more of this. Lean into this. And we're like, hey, we're in. Let's do it and see what happens. And so it really was a collaborative effort, not just between the 3 designers, but all of the, hundreds of playtesters that we've been honored to have.
Absolutely.
We had 50 at one Gen Con. It was It was amazing. So we're super grateful. So grateful.
Yeah. Now we talked a little bit about now there's a community playbook. Is there any other like big changes that happened within the last about 6 months or so since our Descent into Midnight series went out?
Yeah, that's a good question. The big one that we were just introducing at the time, to the point where you and Amelia had not heard of it yet, was that community playbook. So let me talk about that a little bit for those people who heard the last one. So the community playbook was a concept that Taylor came up with that Richard and I were like, yes, please, let's do this. Which is, as you're creating your world, you get a visual. You can have a visual. People learn differently, and we're trying to do our best to be able to address the different ways that people learn and read and see as much as we can. So having a community playbook allows people to have a concrete thing at the table that they can look at, that they're building together, and really even an artifact that they can carry away after their campaign's done. But during the creation of the community, when you take actions, those actions will affect the community, and you will have harmony tokens and corruption tokens that are introduced onto the map. So when you fill your harmony track, which is like our experience points, and you gain a new advancement, or you complete your corruption track and you gain corruption moves, you're placing these harmony and corruption tokens on the community in places that are narratively appropriate for the story that you're telling and the things that pushed you over the edge. In some cases with corruption moves, you're placing more than one corruption token. And the way that we have it set currently for the long-term game is that a harmony token can erase a corruption token.
Nice.
But a corruption token can never erase a harmony token.
Oh, I love that.
So for the long-term game, what we're trying to do, and you don't get to see this in the one-shots as much, but with the long-form campaigns, what we're aiming for is this idea that over time, hope can and will help to push back the thing that's affecting the world around you in such a negative and antagonistic way. And so once you place a harmony token, for the most part, that harmony token stays where it is. Now, if a corruption can be introduced into that space, but you just have harmony and corruption happening at the same time. So if you place a harmony token in where a corruption token already exists, they cancel each other out. And so over time, you're going to see a lot of corruption's very easy to rack up, particularly early in the early campaigns. And hope is a little harder to rack up. And you need to rack it up by doing a lot of things, learning from your mistakes. Like with a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games, our game is a fail-forward style game. You gain harmony from actions you take and things that you do that affect the world around you, but you also gain harmony when you roll low and you roll a 6 or less, and you make a mistake, and you learn from that mistake, and that harmony that you rack up and the mistakes that you learn can help to move the community forward together as a whole.
Gosh, I got goosebumps when you were talking about the long-term implications of the harmony and corruption. And
and I have to tell you, like the concept of the community playbook and placing these tokens was Taylor. And it was absolutely brilliant. And through playtesting back and forth, we started to see kind of this interaction of what could happen if, what if harmony tokens cancel, corruption tokens, but corruption tokens can never cancel harmony. And we were all like, that's the through line of the whole story. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's what we want to see, right? And so, and then the more harmony or the more corruption that stacks up, narratively, you could use it as a timer or a clock like some other PBTA games. You could certainly do that. Or you could just look at it and say, like, look, we have 1 harmony here, but there's 6 corruption. What does that mean? Right? What does that mean here? Like, there's a seed of hope that's being crushed. Like, what does that mean narratively to us? And then as a group, as a table, you can come up with the idea of, like, man, what are we doing here? Like, are we losing this place? Like, does this place break off into the abyss? Like, what is going on here? Even though there's hope alive here, it just can't do much of anything. Right. So we're leaving that a little bit more open to interpretation. But those individuals, like particularly myself, because I came from more of a simulationist background, for decades, I could look at that and say, oh, you know what? I'm going to think like, all right, as a guide, when we hit 3 corruption here, I'm going to do X. If this hits 5 corruption, I think I'm going to move this concept forward, right? Yeah. And you can use it as a bit of a guideline if you want to do that. It gives you something to hold on to if you want to, or you can interpret it a little more loosely if you're more free form and mind's eye. It can be used either way, and that's something that we tried to do with a lot of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I know we're running a little low on time, but there's one question I had left for you.
Sure.
Is there anything interesting from the Kickstarter that you'd like to highlight that we haven't gone over?
Thank you for that. Actually, yes. So we will have several articles. There's currently an article right now on tribality.com where you can see our specific tiers. The ones that exist will be that way. We are contemplating adding a tier or 2 because of some things that have come up recently, particularly having to do with a streaming platform that is going to be doing a Descent into Midnight series based on our stretch goals, what we achieve. And so we're looking at adapting things to that. But at the $40 level, you get a hardback full-color book plus the PDF. At the $80 level, you get that PDF and that hardback copy, and you can have a hardback copy donated to a school, an after-school program, an aquarium, a library, any place that you want to have a copy donated to, we will ship a copy to that location. At every level above that, you get that donation copy. So at 80, at the next level, which is at 110, you get the hardback copy we already talked about. You get the donation copy. And you get the Kickstarter exclusive copy. When we decided to do a Kickstarter exclusive copy at 110, we had a long conversation. We said, look, I love my exclusive copies of stuff. Also, I'd like to have an everyday copy I can beat up and have at the table. Yeah. And since we want that, let's do that. And in addition to that, we're donating a book too. So the $110 level, we think that the people who can afford that will want to look at that level, and because you can donate. You can get a copy for yourself or give it to a friend and have the Kickstarter exclusive. And every level from $110 up gets all 3 of those.
That's amazing.
Plus the PDF, obviously. And so that's something that we're really, really proud of. This was inspired by Bree Sheldon's Kickstarter for Turn, which is a brilliant PBTA game. Please go check it out. Their Kickstarter that they had allowed me to get a copy for myself and purchase a copy to donate to the community. And I jumped on that in a heartbeat because I wanted to support Turn with more money, but I was like, well, I just, and it gave me this thing of like, oh, I also feel good because I want to give something. And we wanted to do something very similar. This game is focused on not just socio-emotional concepts and ideas that we really want to introduce into the world, but also the educational aspects of marine science and evolutionary biology and ecology and things that teachers and educators can introduce at their tables. So it's covering everything that I wanted to learn when I was a kid. My wife is a teacher as well. She was a special education teacher for over a decade. And I talked about a lot of these things as well as we were developing, not just the game, but particularly toward the end of the game, like how are we making this more accessible and what are our goals? And this is how we talk about the raising of our children as well. So taking a game like I love the D&D after school programs. I love seeing how popular that they are. It's fantastic. Please, my kids will be playing it a ton as well. Also, perhaps we're thinking Descent into Midnight for, again, these different socio-emotional concepts and stories, having something a little different, and also focusing on some educational aspects as well. And I think being able to lean into this player agency and allow particularly the younger kids who are learning to harness that imagination, give them the agency to be a part of the story and to be a part of the story and have the guide that may be the adult to start, be able to sit back, be quiet, and listen to the amazing things that can come out of a child's mouth or a young player's mouth when they're allowed to speak, right? Just sit and listen. It's incredible.
Oh my gosh.
So that's something that we're really excited about is the donation tiers, and then the $110 level we think people are going to be quite interested in as well.
Absolutely. That's awesome. As if I couldn't be more excited about this game.
Well, thank you. We're hoping the Kickstarter itself, as we keep adding things and we're talking about it, we hope that we put as much intention into what we're doing and why we're doing it with the Kickstarter as we did with the game. And that we want to walk away from this saying that we had a successful game and a successful Kickstarter, but also not just financially or whatnot, but also that we're proud of what we did and what we can do, and hopefully lift up the community as much as we possibly can from our tiny little corner of the pond.
Absolutely. Well, Rich, thank you so much for joining me to talk about Descent into Midnight. You are now officially one episode closer to your t-shirt.
I got 5 more to go.
We'll get there someday.
That's right.
Could you go ahead and remind everyone where they can find you online?
Absolutely. I encourage people to just pop over. The easiest is to pop over to @DIMRPG. That's @DIMRPG for the Descent into Midnight Kickstarter. From that Twitter feed that's pinned up there, you can find links to myself, to Richard, and to Taylor. It's just the easiest way to link straight over to us. You can find us there. I am on Facebook as well. I am going to be shutting my Facebook down to just probably family after a while and focusing on some other things, including a new website I'm working on and some other things. But for now, just link over to Twitter, and you can find us at DIMRPG or online, descentintomidnight.com. www.descentintomidnight.com. Oh, and if you want to check out the Kickstarter, you can go to dimrpg.io/KS. So dimrpg.io//KS should take you to the Kickstarter.
Very cool. I am very happy that URL exists.
So are we.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for joining me for this special bonus episode of Character Creation Spotlight. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to check out the Descent into Midnight Kickstarter, which kicked off this last Saturday. And we'll be back at our regular time next week. We'll see you then. Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can also be found on Twitter at CreationCast or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Bolter, and I can be found on Twitter at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Our other host, Amelia Antrim, can be found on Twitter at Ginger Reckoning. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permission from the podcast they originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game systems used and today's guests can be found in the show notes. If you'd like to leave us a rating or review, we have links to various review platforms out there, including Apple Podcasts, in our show notes. Also, check the show notes for links to our other projects. Thanks for joining us, and remember, we find that the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We will see you next time.
Now we gotta read some show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Character Creation Cast is hosted by the One Shot Podcast Network. If you enjoyed our show, visit oneshotpodcast.com, where you will find other great shows like Total Party Kill.
Total Party Kill is a weekly live Twitch stream where John Patrick Cohen, Eddie Klinker, and James Dugan play through Cephalofair Games' Gloomhaven. Join them in the stream to play along through the action and interact with a constantly changing cast of characters and special guests, or watch them after the fact on the One Shot YouTube channel. TPK airs Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central Time at twitch.tv/OneShotRPG.